Call to order, Town of Prescott Valley Study Session, May 2nd, 2024. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Leyva.
Here.
Councilmember Greer.
Here.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Here.
Councilmember Hipperly.
Here.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Present.
Vice Mayor Hunt.
Here.
Mayor Pulguda.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. First item up is 2B, Destination Marketing Organization. Soto, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members for the opportunity to present to you today. I am Diana Soto, Economic Development Specialist with the Town of Prescott Valley. In recent years, consumer interest in local travel has surged. The desire to frequently explore new destinations and experience different cultures not far from home is a new trend in travel. The continuance of remote work has also contributed to this uptick as individuals are now balancing leisure and work with blended workations. These types of getaways are no longer required to be on a tropical island across the globe, but yet in places just like Prescott Valley. Our location is conveniently accessible from the Arizona metro areas and within a 4-hour drive of various state lines. Our town distinguishes itself in this trend as visitors are attracted to our community events, entertainment, and scenic landscape. There is an excitement about Prescott Valley being the cooler side of Arizona. Whether it's summer visitors seeking respite from hot weather or whether it is winter travelers looking to cool down from colder climates. Managing our amenities for these visitors while addressing the needs and concerns of local businesses is very important. That is why we are exploring the opportunity to partner with the Arizona Office of Tourism and assume the role of destination marketing organization, and asking your consideration for approval at future council meeting. What is a DMO? A destination marketing organization is a legally incorporated nonprofit entity or governmental body tasked with promoting tourism and managing economic development by marketing a destination year-round. Typically, DMOs are established within a local government municipality where there is no convention and visitors bureau to handle tourism on a broader scale. It is important to note that a DMO differs from an official visitors information center. For instance, our Prescott Valley Chamber of Commerce operates as a designated Arizona Visitor Information Center. Upon tourist arrival in town, the Chamber effectively provides the necessary information for their current visit. Only one DMO is allocated per city or town. Prescott Valley would be categorized as a rural DMO due to the Yavapai County's population, which falls below 3 million residents according to the 2020 decennial census. The rural DMO designation makes Prescott Valley eligible for participation in the cooperative marketing program offered by the Arizona Office of Tourism. I will touch more on that in a bit. The DMO oversees tourism by informing travelers about Prescott Valley's attractions and amenities, identifying target markets through focus campaigns, and partnering with local organizations to carry out mutual objectives. This collaboration not only ensures the responsible management of tourism, but enhances the town's reputation as a sustainable destination, in turn preserving natural and cultural resources long-term. As a designated state DMO, the Arizona Office of Tourism partners with local DMOs to synchronize tourism promotion efforts across Arizona. Achieving recognition as a DMO requires fulfilling certain criteria established by the Arizona Office of Tourism. This includes having a dedicated budget for tourism marketing, maintaining an online presence for tourism activities, and receiving formal acknowledgement from the municipality designating the organization as a DMO. This acknowledgement could take the form of resolution or contractual agreement. Additionally, in the future, the DMO may decide to engage a tourism advisory committee, which includes local businesses, community stakeholders, and residents. The application for DMO status must be completed prior to July 1st. The benefits of a DMO. The efforts of a DMO will contribute to the economic stability in our business community. The visitor spending on accommodations, dining, shopping, and entertainment is a full circle cycle that ensures local thriving businesses supports job creation, and significantly contributes to overall Prescott Valley prosperity. Additionally, by taking proactive approach to managing our visitor base, we can preserve our town's unique character and resources. The Arizona Office of Tourism has created a cooperative marketing program designed for rural DMOs, including Prescott Valley, which qualifies based on the previous census data. Through this program, participants can help guide tourism to rural areas of Arizona, including Prescott Valley. The program offers several advantages such as research, strategic planning, content production, integrated marketing campaigns, and outdoor messaging. The annual spending cap for each participating DMO is established at $50,000 with a 100% match. Applications for this program must be submitted by September 1st once the DMO has been established in July. In conclusion, the City of Prescott currently stands as the only DMO in our region. There are 21 other DMOs operating within a 100-mile radius of Prescott Valley. This endeavor is in line with Prescott Valley's Vision 2024 strategic plan, Prosperous Community, aimed at fostering an environment conducive to the lifelong prosperity of our residents by offering diverse job opportunities within a growing economy. Our specific objectives to this focus is to manage tourism in the future as well. I thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council for listening to their presentations. Are there any questions or any further clarifications needed?
Council, have any questions? Vice Mayor?
Ms. Soto, is there a cost to apply?
There is no cost to apply, no.
And is there like an annual membership or anything?
There is not.
Okay, and so we get grant money, is that what I heard?
That is correct. So there's a $50,000 per year cap. If we were to invest $50,000 into the program, they will match us up to $50,000, but we are not obligated to invest $50,000.
Got it, thank you.
I think it's a no-brainer, ma'am.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
great job. And on a side note, congratulations to you and Mr. Cutter for your recent
Thank you.
awards.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
With that being said, we'll move on. Item 2A, fiscal year 2024-25 budget review with Ms. Morris. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Deputy Town Manager Ryan Judy will kick us off.
Mayor, Council, it's always a monumental day when we first bring the budget before the council. I can tell you that our finance team has spent hundreds of hours and across the organization. It wouldn't surprise me if we have spent thousands of hours developing a budget. So I want to take the time to thank our finance team. Irina Ermerkova is in the audience, Lisa Simrak, Pam Gray, and Selena Morris, our new finance director, who just started, what, 3 months ago? 2 months ago now, so it seems longer. So she was really thrown into the thick of things here as we were in the midst of our budget process. So I want to thank her team for getting us to this point. Adoption of the budget is one of the most critical things that the council does because it really sets our vision for the coming year. On this first slide, you'll see we are presenting a fiscally conservative and community-minded budget. We have worked to make it a structurally balanced budget that supports the town's vision in the strategic plan that we'll talk about in a little bit. We also make sure that ongoing revenues meet our ongoing expenditures. So we've split the ongoing and the one-time. There was a time when that was all mixed into one budget. We've worked to separate out those one-time revenues. Those are revenues that we receive from construction sales tax when like a new home is built or new business. And that also helps us to support our long-term financial viability, which will ultimately, we hope, continue to improve our excellent bond ratings. We have worked to maintain the minimum reserves that are required by GFOA and in fact exceed those, so we're pleased with that. The budget process is almost a year-long process, and really this year it began with the adoption of our Vision 2024 strategic plan. In addition, we did a community survey, and we'll talk more about that in the following slide. The past 3 months, we've been going back and forth with the departments about their proposed budgets, and they each have their own teams when they're developing their departmental budgets. Now we're in this adoption phase over the next 2 months, and one of Selena's final slides will talk about the timeline for official adoption of the budget. And it's not just a one-time adoption either. once the budget is adopted, we examine our revenues and expenditures on a monthly basis to make sure that our revenues are what we projected and that we have enough funds to complete the projects that we've planned for. And if we don't, we're able to pause those projects to make sure we're not exceeding our budget. And honestly, the ink is barely dry on the budget before we start planning for the next one. So it is a continual process. The council will remember that as recent as 2 years ago, and department heads will remember this well, we used to go out and have open houses in the community. We would have one here in the library, and we would go out into the master plan subdivisions. Turnout was very, very light. Although it may excite Selena and the finance team, most people don't like to talk about the budget, but it is very important. And so we moved to an online platform, and we received 126, I believe, is that right, Selena?
That's right.
Responses to the survey. And there weren't any big surprises with what we saw. So what's the most used service in town? Casey will be happy to see. It's the public library. So we have a lot of people using our library. That's followed very closely by our trails and shared use path, our playgrounds, and nearly half of the respondents have attended one of our forest signature events. So that's exciting to see. So what are the areas of highest priority for our residents? Again, no surprise, water conservation, open space, followed by street repairs, business retention and recruitment, which really is job creation. And the biggest challenges facing our town, again, no surprise, is affordable housing. We've all heard that repeatedly over the past couple of years. And of course, everybody wants new retail, restaurant options, grocery stores, and securing our water resources, again, is obviously very important to us and to our residents. This is something you've seen a lot over the past few months. It was adopted in January this year, and we simplified our mission statement to simply read, deliver exceptional service to enhance our quality of life. That's the reason we exist as a town. So those 4 areas are high-performing team, water and land stewardship, quality of life, and a prosperous community. And we will go into each of those and how we are focusing our budget priorities to meet these objectives. So high-performing team. You know, one of the most important assets of any team is the people, the employees of the organization. With this budget, we are proposing a 5% merit increase for all eligible employees. We just completed last year a comp and class study, which I don't believe we had done for more than 20 years. So we want to make sure that we are keeping pace with inflation and cost of living. So we are proposing a 5% adjustment there. In addition, we are proposing to increase our match for our 457 plan from 5% to 6% as of January 1st, 2025. It's important to note that town of Prescott Valley does not participate in Social Security. Last year, we transitioned to the state retirement plan, but it's not meant to supply 100% of your post-retirement income. They want you to invest in other areas. Most ASRS cities participate in Social Security. So what this is, it's an attempt to have a matching program for those cities so that we are competitive with the benefits that we offer. So the town would match 6% if employees went up to 6%. So we encourage all of our team to do that if they're possible. We're also making a change to our health insurance plan. Historically, the town has offered 2 options, employee only or employee and family. So we are separating that out into 4 different tiers where we can cover just the employee, or an employee can cover their child or their spouse, or continue to cover their family. So we will have 4 different tiers of choices for our employees. And again, we're increasing funding for training. We want to make sure our employees are properly trained and have the certifications they need. Lots of investment in technology and software. We're going to keep Casey Danner very busy over the coming year. The next slide, water and land stewardship. Again, very important to us in our community. The largest item you see there is a grant for the Upper Verde River Watershed Protection Coalition. It's followed by a water rights purchase at $1 million. Council recall approximately 2 years ago, we bought 20 acres in the Del Rio Springs area, which is actually now part of a state park. It's a very beautiful area, but that purchase came with type 2 water rights. Those rights are rights that we can use for economic development purposes. If we have a job creator or a retailer that wants to come to town and they need water rights, we can allocate those water credits for that purpose. So this is just a placeholder in case something comes up during the year. Phase 2 of the master drainage plan, that's being funded by the Yavapai County Flood Control District. That continues our partnership with West to look at the town and develop potential recharge projects and better manage our stormwater. And that's one of the other projects that we have in there is $250,000 for potentially a pilot recharge project. Quality of life. This is something that impacts all of us and all of our residents on a daily basis. Everything from streets and sidewalks to public safety to parks and recreation. So we are proposing a pavement preservation program of $2.5 million in addition to our normal standard maintenance to fund our public works crew. Our dispatch services in the police department, we are part of a regional dispatch system with the city of Prescott and CAFMA, so we're continuing that program. We're continuing the rollout of body-worn cameras, so that's reflected in the budget as well. And very exciting, Stephanie was successful in getting a $200,000 grant from the Arizona Department of Housing to further our affordable housing plans. We look forward to seeing that come to completion. And in our Parks and Recreation, we have money in there for master planning for Glassford Dells, but also we've talked about Fane Park. Fane Park could be a fabulous historical park. There's a lot of history there from Calvary and settlements to people that populated that. If you walk around the Calvary Trail, you'll see old chimney stacks and ruins there. So that is an amazing park and has potential for a lot of enjoyment for our residents. Prosperous community. This really is three things. Those three things are jobs, jobs, jobs. So we really want to increase the jobs in our community. Our Economic Development Department, which you heard earlier, just won 3 awards. This is their entire focus to really raise our economy, find those jobs, bring in retailers. And I'll point as well to the last item there. We are looking to replace our permitting software with a new platform, wanting to move into an online presence where residents and businesses can actually submit their plans online. It can be reviewed online. They can receive electronic comments back, and everything can be done electronically and quicker than this pushing paper that we've been doing for the last year. So I know we have several departments that are excited about that possibility. At this stage, this is just a brief overview before I get into the hard numbers. Are there any questions?
Mr. Judy, how many people responded to the public survey?
126.
126. Thank you.
It was better than the 20 or 25 we would normally get through our
Max.
other efforts.
Anything else from Mr. Judy before we hear from Ms. Morris? All right.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. As Mr. Judy mentioned, I'll be going through the financial aspects of the budget. What we hope that you see as we go through the budget is that we've used the strategic plan as our blueprint. We're really focused on having a long-term perspective. We're also wanting to make sure that we align all of our expenditures with our goals and that we're really focused on results and outcomes. On this slide, what we really wanted to show you is that we do have, we're pleased to provide you with a fiscal year 25 structurally balanced budget. And what that means is that our ongoing revenues exceed our ongoing expenses. In our current forecast for the fiscal year 25 budget, we have a surplus of actually $7 million. And so what happens in the years that we have surplus, that money goes to build our fund balance over time. And we'll be kind of talking about that theme as we go through the slides. What you'll also see, the second set of bars is our one-time revenues, which is the blue line, and then our expenditures. So you can see that the expenditures do outweigh our revenues, but what that is it's a strategic use of money, the strategic use of our fund balance that we've set aside before for certain projects. And again, we'll talk about that investment that we're making over time. What we want to do first is look at our townwide expenditures. So this is across all funds. Our fiscal year 25 budget is $205 million, but we'll kind of walk through the different bars that you have. The first bar is the fiscal year 23 actuals. The second one is the fiscal year 24 budget, which is the year that we're currently in. And then we project where we'll end the year, which is the third one. And then the 25 budget is the last one. And what you'll kind of notice as you look at the graphs is that our personnel expense, which is the green piece on the bottom, we are relatively stable with slight increases year over year, but it's really a stable environment. Our operating expenses are also very stable over time. We're looking at about $40 million in the fiscal year 25 budget. Where you see some variances in that gold bar, and that's where we have our capital outlays. So the capital outlays and capital improvement plan that we'll talk about in a second presentation is really where we anticipate some different funding sources. So there's provisional funding sources for grants that we want to obtain, bonding sources, that type of thing. So if those things don't come to fruition, then you'll see that variance between the budget and the actuals. The other items that kind of influence whether or not we can get some of those capital outlay projects done our supply chain issues. Over the last couple of years, that's been a real challenge. And then also our internal capacity, depending on the complexity of a project, we may need to use more resources. And then we also have some partners. And so when it takes some time to go through those can all result in a timing difference. And so you'll always see somewhat of a variance between the capital outlay and the budget and what's actually done throughout the year. But that's also very necessary to put in the budget so that we have the budget authority if those provisional sources of income come to fruition. This is a slide showing you our townwide revenues. It follows the same timeline. So we start with the 23 actuals, then we look at the 24 budget, the 24 projected, and the 25 budget. And what you'll see is that our income, and it's a little bit backwards, so the scale starts with business activities on the top, but then on the bars, it's actually on the bottom. So in fiscal year 25, we anticipate $19.5 million of business activity revenues that comes from water, wastewater, and stormwater. The next piece that you'll see is the tax revenue. We anticipate $42.6 million in taxes. That's one of our largest income items. And then the next gold piece is intergovernmental revenues. So that piece includes approximately $24 million in state shared revenues that we expect. And then from a grant standpoint, we have provisional grants in there of about $30 million. So again, you'll see the volatility in that gold bar. And then the other items that we have there are charges for services, fines and forfeitures, investment rental income. Those are lower in revenues. We run about 1.6 in the licensing and permits. The charges for service are about 400,000. Investment and rental income is about 500,000. And then we also do have a miscellaneous piece, which are just kind of those items that are outside of the items that we talked about, but a large piece of that is the development impact fees. And then we have also, the last piece is transfers. So once we receive funds, if we designate those for special purposes, we transfer those to the respective funds, and those are considered revenues in those funds. So debt service, this is a picture of our revenue obligation bonds. We do also have some debt in the wastewater funds, but we're very close to paying that off, so the chart didn't really tell a good story. So just to recap the wastewater, we have the debt with the Water Infrastructure Financing Authority, and in fiscal year 25, the debt payment $670,000, and then in 26 and 27, it's $335,000, and then that debt will be paid in full. The revenue obligation bonds, what you'll see is that in fiscal year 25, we have a $5 million debt service payment, and that falls to about $1.4 million in 26 and 27. And then you'll see from 2028 through 2032, our debt service level remains at about $300,000, and then that debt service will also be paid in full. One important item on this slide is our bond rating. So for a town our size, we have achieved the highest bond ratings that you can achieve, being a town of our population and our economics. And so what's interesting about that is the bond rating agencies, when they do their bond review calls, there's a number of items that are important to them. First is the strength and the consistency of our fund balance and our reserves, and we'll talk about that more in detail. The other is how we treat our unfunded liability. So we have a plan to pay down the PSPRS unfunded liability. And then the other piece is really the economic outlook for not only our town, but also our region. And so all of those take play when they determine our bond rating. And that's very important, as if we go out for another bonded debt or things like that, even our creditors, such as WIFA, they look at our bond rating, and then that saves us money from an interest rate standpoint. So the current budget, as presented for fiscal year '25, does request authorization for 15 additional positions. Most of these are general fund positions, except for the last three. Those are stormwater, so those have their own source of income and revenue. Those are paid by fees from the users. And the other ones we'll kind of mention as we go through each of the departments. But what we've really tried to focus on is making sure that we have people on the front line who are interacting with our citizens, our residents, and our businesses, and making sure that we can deliver the level of service and meet their expectations as communicated through you and through all of the surveys that we've been doing. So we're about to go into the major fund summaries. I'll pause for a moment to see if you have any questions. No, okay. Blazing over with the numbers, right? So, so the general fund summaries, there's 4 major funds that we'll talk about. 2 are governmental. Those are the general fund and then the highway user revenue fund. And then we'll talk about wastewater and water. So the thing about fund balance, as we mentioned before, in any year that we have revenues that exceed expenses, we have a surplus. That surplus then goes to build our fund balance over time. And you can see from fiscal year 17 through what we anticipate in 25, we've really been growing our fund balance. The piece to really look at for strategic investments to meet those goals and objectives is the purple portion, but we'll kind of talk about the others first. So the bottom portion, the orange part, is the stabilization, or what we like to call the rainy day fund. Use of that money would take council action, and we would not be able to access that unless we had 0 unassigned fund balance. So we don't ever foresee that ever happening, and so that's really kind of that piece that stabilizes our fund balance. It's kind of our foundation and will always be there. That currently, we're forecasting that at the end of 25 to be $9.4 million. The next piece over that is the unassigned unavailable, is what we call it. And what that is really our fund reserve. So per your policy, we set aside 25% of our anticipated revenues and expenses. And as Mr. Judy had mentioned, we actually exceed the industry standards. So the Government Finance Officers Association recommends 2 months worth, and we have 3 or 25% of those expenses. So we've exceeded that because we want to be more conservative. The reserves are really that part of the fund balance that hedge our risks and uncertainty, because that piece is there just to make sure if there's something that's happening in the economy that we have what we call a buffer. The available piece, as I mentioned before, that's the piece that we can take and look at the different investments that we'd like to do to meet our goals, and we can use those investments. And then on the top of that part, you'll see that there's a piece from the library litigation. So those proceeds we're setting aside for specific purposes. And then the CARES Act funding, that was the piece that we set aside to contribute to the YMCA construction. So you'll see that those are shrinking in fiscal year 25 because we're using those, but those are, again, our intentional uses. So a good way to look at our fund balance, if you think about your own home or your own household, you set money aside in a savings account because you might want a savings account, or you might be saving for a trip, or for repairs or a large purchase. So over time, you'll set aside money, and when you're ready to either go on that trip or make that purchase, that's when you'll take it. So that's kind of what you'll see here. It's our pay-as-you-go kind of option. We're setting money aside and being able to pay for things with cash in bank rather than doing debt or any other alternative funding source. And so that's kind of how to look at the fund balance. The next fund balance that we'll look at is the Highway User Revenue Fund. And kind of the same way that I just described our savings account, you'll see that we've been saving over time. And then in fiscal year 25, we intend to invest that in street improvements and pavement preservation and what have you. The way that the Highway User Revenue Fund is replenished each year is through the vehicle license tax. And so it's really meant to be spent on improving roads in that current time, because those taxpayers are paying during this time period, and so they're looking for that same return in the same tax period. So generally, the HERF funds in most jurisdictions are subsidized, and so you'll see that the fund balance will remain kind of at near 0. Oops. So the next slide is the wastewater fund. So This is an enterprise fund, so the accounting on it is a little bit different. So we can't really use a fund balance as a good indication of our liquidity or our strength. The way that we measure that is like how you would any other business. You look at your working capital. So you take your current assets and you minus your current liabilities, and that pretty much gives you one amount you have to invest in other items. And you can see here that we've maintained a healthy working capital over time. We do set aside a reserve, so in our cash balance, we would never access that piece, and that's based on also three months or 90 days worth of expenses or 25%. From a benchmark standpoint, the GFOA, or the Government Finance Officers Association, they don't actually give you a hard figure. What they say is that you need to develop a target based on your finances and what you want to achieve in these enterprise funds. And so we've started to really look at strategy in both the wastewater and the water funds to make sure that we're building a municipal utility that can deliver what we need, balancing that with conservation, and then really meeting the needs of the community. So the water fund, again, this is calculated the same way using that working capital. What's kind of interesting here is that you'll see in the 24-25 budget, the reserve really increases. And that's because the reserve, as we calculate it today by our policy, is based on the number of expenditures. So we have a lot of capital outlay with the PFAS project and things like that. And so it's artificially kind of increasing our reserve. So we're, again, taking a look at strategy. What's a better measure? How do we better make that stable? Because we don't want volatility in our reserve either. We'd like to maintain something solid. And so more to come on that as we continue to develop those things. So I'll pause there before I hit the department highlights and investments to see if you have any questions. Okay. So what we hope that you'll see in the next slides are really that we've taken a multifaceted approach to implementing our strategic plan. So we've really taken that strategic plan, determined what our goals and objectives are, and then made them actionable through the budget. So every dollar that we have in here, we've tied to some type of focus area or something that supports that focus area. Really, we're hoping that the budget, you'll see, will address our top challenges. Again, that's attainable housing, having shopping options, water resource management, infrastructure with streets and transportation, and then the economic concerns that we talked about with job creation, and then making sure that we manage levels of crime and make sure our public safety is at the level of service that we really want for our residents and our businesses. So this first slide just gives you an idea of how we allocate that the resources, and this is on the expenditure side. So really there's $205 million of allocation represented in this pie chart, and we'll kind of go through each of these. One thing to mention before we move forward is that the budget also does not include any of the CFD expenses. We'll bring that to you with the tentative budget, so you won't see that broken out here. And the other thing is that we'll touch lightly on the departments because Mr. Judy has already gone through and tied a lot of their project expenses to those focus areas. So we won't torture you by going through them twice. So the police, obviously they have a big role in the quality of life or public safety. A couple of things that we want to point out are personnel. We've added a patrol officer, a part-time animal compliance assistant, and a full-time emergency manager. And so we've identified some of those critical positions and added those. The other thing, I know that we talked about body-worn cameras earlier, but I just wanted to remind you that those are specific long-term investments that we had decided a couple years ago to invest in. What you'll see is an increase in the budget because during those first couple years, we were fortunate to have a supplement through a grant funding mechanism, which really picked up a lot of the costs during the first couple of years. So you'll see that level out as a level expense going forward at about $272 million. Some of the other items, the contracted dispatch services. So we do have an increase in that contract, but the chief and his team are really engaged in meeting with everyone who's in that collaborative dispatch service. So they talk about the needs, the calls, who's using the services, and what resources they need. So when there's an increase in that contract, it's a well thought out based on what we need in our community. Some other items, we talked about high-performing teams. They're investing in the Arizona LifeScan, which is with the thumb printing, the fingerprinting services that they provide, and the Axon Comms is a way for them to integrate all their communications in their interview rooms. So they're very focused on meeting that quality of life in the high-performing teams. Public Works. So when we looked over this survey, we know that one of the important things was pedestrian and cycling infrastructure, sidewalks, that type of thing. So Public Works is really key on that portion. They do, they manage our drainage, our signal lights, our street lights, our sign and road improvements, our mowing. They really are focused on making sure that from even an economic development standpoint, that our community looks like the community that people want to come to, whether it's for business or whether it's for residents. Some of the highlights here are that we are adding a signal technician and a fleet technician. And then the other piece on the other expenses is that a couple years ago, we started replacing our vehicles through the enterprise lease program. We kind of stalled a little bit because of COVID, and then we couldn't really get the vehicles. So we're still investing in that program, and hopefully we'll catch up so that we can have a fleet that represents the city well and does not have, you know, safety issues and that type of thing. Also with Public Works, we do have an increase in the repairs and maintenance, but those are really centered around the traffic signals, streets and roads. And so again, we're trying to meet those needs of the community through the infrastructure and making sure that this is the place that you know, people want to work, live, and play. Stormwater is actually a new division under Public Works. This is their first year of operations. As I mentioned earlier, they do have 3 new positions proposed in the budget, but they do have their own funding source. So as they continue to operate this year, you know, we'll have to see, you know, how close we are with the first year of operations. We have everything from personnel, operating, and some one-time expenses in there. So hopefully they can get people on board and start performing those strategic projects that they have planned. So community service, as Mr. Judy said earlier, they're kind of the stars from the public survey as far as use. Just as a reminder, 68% said that they used or highly valued the library services, 64% valued the trails and the use paths, 62% the playgrounds, and then 46%, or about half of our community that responded, go to those signature events. They're also really focused on the open space and the natural beauty and those outdoor recreation options. And we know that during the survey, there was about 53% of the respondents who said that that was important to them. So they do have the addition of a parks maintenance worker, technician, as well as an outdoor programming specialist directly related to those open space items. Otherwise, they've done some investments in their multi-use paths, making sure that we keep up on the repairs for concrete and fencing. And then we did add a little bit to the special events and then library materials. Again, focused on those areas that we know are important to you in the community. Development services. They had some increases and some movement. So neighborhood services is in their second year of operations, but we actually ended up moving $25,000 out of the development services budget into neighborhood services. We do have an increase in plan review consulting services, just to make sure that we can keep up the demand with our business community. And then, as Mr. Judy mentioned earlier, we have the investment, which is really a cross-functional investment with their online permitting system as well. Neighborhood services, so as I mentioned earlier, this is their second year of operations, so they're continuing to build their capacity and the organization. Some exciting things that are coming down the pike are the down payment assistance program. They're in the process of kind of vetting out the scope and how that will work. There's a $60,000 investment in the upcoming budget. They have a total of $50,000 in abatement, so we added $25,000 to that just so that they could respond to kind of those houses or those areas that need some help in remediating their areas. And then we had that exciting announcement about the $200,000 for the affordable housing plan. Wastewater, they're pretty steady on personnel, but what they have is an allocation of a GIS tech. So we've added a GIS specialist to the IT staffing list. but it is a shared cost. So 25% will be shared with the wastewater division and 25% with the water division because they're heavy users in that area for GIS. And so that's a way to kind of fund that position with the heaviest users. The other piece that I want to point out is that we moved to what we'll call a total cost allocation and recovery model. So basically what that says is all of us service organizations who support them, so finance, HR, legal, the council, the city managers, we recover those costs in the enterprise funds because the thought is that the enterprise funds should include all of the costs to operate. So they really couldn't do it without those, general and administrative functions. And so what we've done is we've done that based on total cost. And so they're picking up that expense, but it was also contemplated in the rate study. And so it matches really well with how we contemplated operations moving forward. On the water side, we know that in the survey, people are really focused on effective management of water resources and conservation. And so we have a lot of projects that are coming up in the CIP and even operationally that are aimed towards that. You can see that from a personnel standpoint, we do note that they are picking up 25% of that GIS specialist. That's offset because we did move some of their staffing costs, the administrative services manager and the administrative service specialist into the general fund based on their workload and where they're focused. Town clerk, here what we have is a notice is the election services. So we did actually allocate $438,000 for the upcoming elections, should there need to be a special election, that type of thing, publicity pamphlets. So in the past, we've not budgeted it within the town clerk's budget, and then we've had to do a contingency. So we thought we would be proactive so that we can react to those items that we need to get done. The town manager, so we had a reclassification of the communications manager position to the chief communications officer. And then we also have added a graphic artist in the communications department. And we all know that the town manager is very engaged in all of our focus areas and leading us to, meet even the business retention and the recruitment piece through the economic development division. And then just as Diana had mentioned earlier. Finance, so near and dear to my heart. So our personnel expense actually went down because we reclassed or moved the grants coordinator position into neighborhood services, just to focus more on getting those grants rather than the back end of the accounting part. From an operating standpoint, we're pretty level. What I want to point out is that we do have $50,000 in one-time money to start to do the needs planning and the assessment for an enterprise resource planning financial system. And so that will involve making sure that we achieve what all of the departments need in the financial system, as well as kind of that outward reporting to the citizens. And so we don't anticipate replacing the system until 2 years out, but it will take a lot of planning to get there. Information technology, so this is where the GIS specialist is housed. Only 50% of the costs will remain in their budget because of that allocation to water and wastewater. Some of the things of importance here is that they just finished their IT strategic plan, so they'll be looking at implementing that in fiscal year 25. The other big difference, which it kind of shows as they have a large jump in their budget, but they actually don't, because we reclassed all of our software maintenance and renewals into the IT budget. By doing this, that allows us to centralize. We can better see how much we spend on technology, so we can do that analysis about whether or not we're getting our return. It facilitates the management of the IT resources, make sure that we don't duplicate functionality, and it makes sure that we fully leverage and are more efficient in our use of technology. With moving into that technology age, everything deals with technology, and we just want to make sure that we're very thoughtful and strategic about that. Human resources, so where they really come into play is that high-performing teams. We have some additional money for recruiting, some monies in there for high-performing team awards. And then you'll see that we eliminated the wellness reimbursement program, but that's being replaced with actually money that we negotiated with our insurance company. They'll now provide monies for the wellness program, as well as our broker will be more engaged with wellness coordinators. And so we're able to expand our HR team through our brokers. And so there's a lot of benefit that will come from that. And that's already included in the pricing and the services that they offer us. The magistrate court, so there's not a lot of change other than they have an outsourced security guard right now, and they're bringing that in-house. And so that's really the only change within the court. Legal, we do have the addition of an assistant town attorney programmed into the budget. Other than that, they've had a little bit of movement within the operating lines within their own budget, and then a piece of software moved to the IT department. But otherwise, they're pretty flat in their budget. The next one is the town council. So one thing on the personnel piece, if you noticed in your book, it looks like there's an artificial bump in the compensation. There actually isn't. As part of that method that we used prior to the total cost allocation, we used to take part of your compensation and we would charge it directly to water and wastewater. So you would have a net cost in your budget. So the budget's not going up, but we're just kind of showing we're doing the allocation differently. And then non-departmental, so this is where we put some of those items that aren't specific to one department, like the $2 million additional contribution to PSPRS is here. I noted that there was an increase in the property and casualty insurance program of about 155, but we were just recently notified that the Arizona Risk Pool are providing us with a dividend in July of $453,000. So that's money that we're getting back from the premiums that we've paid. So although we have a bump next year, that's kind of offset by the money that's coming back to us. And then other than that, we have some key dates here. We have employee engagement and budget briefings next week to kind of let them know where we are relative to the budget. We'll come back to you on May 23rd with a tentative budget recommendation. That will be our high limit. So once we establish that limit, when we come back with the final, it has to be lower, the same or lower. That will be our upper limit. Again, the only changes that we expect right now, unless you direct otherwise, are we'll bring back the CFD budgets, and then we'll just do some minor tweaking to transfers or things like that, or as additional quotes come in for projects or things like that, we'll adjust for those as well. And then we have 2 public hearings in June, and then the final budget adoption at the end of June. And then that, if you have any questions or comments before we move to the CIP discussion.
Thank you.
You're
If
welcome.
it was a test to see if we could keep up with you.
Oh,
going
I'm
back and
sorry.
forth. For Public Works, I see we're increasing the mowing, and I support that 100% because it looks way better now than it did before when we only mowed 4 times a year. So thank you for that if there's anybody here from Public Works. And I see that we're increasing, we're focusing on our 4 signature events, which I love, and that we're increasing that budget. And I know that line item is a pretty penny, but in my mind, for quality of life, it's worth every penny because we aren't charging our families that otherwise couldn't afford to come. And that one year that we did charge like $20 for wristbands, we heard about it. And so I support that increase. Thank you for that. And then for neighborhood services, I asked for this last year. I'm asking for it again this year. I think Gilbert might be on board this year, but I would like to establish a trust fund in neighborhood services so that when an attainable housing developer comes in with a recorded covenant to keep the property attainable, that if they need help with building permits or traffic signal or something like that, we have a fund to help them keep each door more attainable. And so I told Gilbert I'd like to see like 250 or 500,000 to seed that trust fund and get it started. So that's that. I love that we're having a graphic artist we've done a good job trying to establish our brand and keep our brand. But with this graphic artist who's going to keep all that and be the brand police, I think that's so important, be it our signature blocks to our letters to whatever we do, that we have a brand and everybody knows that it's RPV. So thank you for that. I don't know what strategic projects is. That was the only thing that made me scratch my head under human resources. Do you know what that is? It's a consultant.
On the consultant, let me go back to that slide.
Oh,
real quick.
that's okay. I mean, she's not here. Dr. Terry's not here, but if it was in the book,
Oh, in the book.
and it says strategic projects consultant. I thought that was interesting. You can get back to me.
Okay.
And then the other thing I would like to see, and I've said this before, is in economic development, some sort of a familiarization tour for commercial brokers to bring them up and show them RPV, not just rely on them visiting our website, but to come in, to work with our hotels, to work with our restaurants, and bring them up and have them spend the night and go to a show at Finley. I don't know how much that would cost, but for this year, and I've asked for it before, I'd like to have that in here. Because if nothing else, show off the 3 awards that you guys hogged and just got. But I think we need to do that. I really do, because there's so many awesome things happening here. Once we get our signs up, once we get the arch up, maybe the beginning of next year, I really want to do something like that. Even if it's only 10 of them.
All right, ma'am, go on with the capital improvement projects.
Switch over. So as you probably know, we've been working on formalizing our capital improvement plan and kind of stretching it from the annual to the 5-year to the 10-year. And what we wanted to do here was kind of introduce that idea of the components of the capital improvement program. So there's really 2 components. There's the capital improvement plan, which Heather oversees with Bill, and so it can include projects and it can include programs. And really, it's kind of that long-range look of how do we maintain our assets, when do we need to replace our assets, that type of thing. And it includes property, plant, and equipment. And so we have kind of a definition there, but we're kind of working through that because a lot of times it's better to look at a CIP project as what is the complexity. So if we're just changing out a fire truck, do we need to really deploy the resources from the CIP manager on that? And then accompanying that, we have the CIP financial plan. So this piece is really centered around the council-approved list of upcoming capital expenditures. And it's a way for us to strategically allocate our revenues, grants, debt, capital contributions, our fund balance over time. And it's typically looking at that 1-year window. So when we look at our overall CIP plan or program, the 1 year would be definitely funded. If those projects have subsequent years, those we will also identify the appropriate resources for, and then the rest we'll call unfunded. They'll still be part of the program, but we'll call them unfunded until we identify the exact funding source. So this is just really a recap. We have a lot of the detail in the book, starting at page 153, but there's different project categories, and we really wanted to call this out so that you could relate the possible investments to those focus areas: infrastructure, water, roadways, wastewater, parks, and open space. You can really, our residents and businesses can see how we are relating our capital improvement projects to our focus areas. And then we want to take a look at the funding sources. So right now we have water, which also includes some anticipated grants and bond offerings, wastewater, streets, stormwater, impact fees, grants. The general fund, the bulk of that, $31 million, is related to the YMCA project and a possible bond in addition to the contributions from both the town and others. And then we have the Capital Projects Growth Fund. So that's one of our biggest resources, or our most available resources. And what we do is we set aside money, 75% of our construction sales tax specifically for the Capital Growth Project Fund. And so this is kind of what we're building over time. There's a lot more that will come with this. We do have all of the directors here if you have questions on specific projects, but we kind of just wanted to introduce you to where we are relative to our focus areas and our investment. And then, of course, during the year, as we kick off different projects, we come back to council with contracts and details and things like that. And I think that's it.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you for this. I've been wanting a CIP for so long, and I feel like it's here. The only thing, if we could we number these? Probably already have, but it would have been easier to refer to them. I'm so excited we're going to get EV charging stations in 25, 26, so thank you for that. I'm very excited to see that in 26, 27, we're looking at Public Works and Utility Operations Center, because that's so needed. And I hope they're excited about that. And then just a lot of the ongoing things that we haven't done before, like budgeting every year for fire hydrants, budgeting every year for shared use paths, and for cameras, which are so important for liability, and LEDs, and manhole covers, and crosswalks, and all of that. I'm just thrilled that we're doing that and can see it in the CIP. Yeah, I think the other thing, I think that might have been it. Oh, I'm glad that we've put Robert Road off some so that we can coordinate with some of the residents that had some great ideas in that. And then the whole project to go under Highway 89A, the trails is funded this year too, correct, in the CIP? The connection between Pronghorn and the south side. Yes, Casey's shaking her head, yes. So I'm really excited about that. And then the whole fill station that we've budgeted for the design of that, because I know that's really important too. And I want to correct myself, when I talked about the strategic project consultant, that's actually in your budget.
I was going to say, it sounded very familiar. And so,
Didn't know what it was.
yeah, so we have been talking about different strategic initiatives. And so we've recently finalized we did a strategic plan internally with our own resources, and we want to match that with the priorities of the city. And so we weren't quite sure, we didn't have the specific project, but we know that we wanted to contribute to the focus areas and other than just the ERP that we're looking at, because we feel like there's a lot of ways that we can add value or support the other departments in their efforts to meet the goals and objectives. And so we kind of left it open to prioritize based on kind of what comes through the process, and then as we do needs assessment.
And the ERAP is a new budget software, which we've been needing for a while, so thank
Yes.
you. Happy birthday. No.
Thank you.
Ms. Morris, great job.
Thank you.
You killed it today with the presentation, so
Thank you.
I just want to just give you kudos for that. And it doesn't look like there's anything else with council. We look forward to you coming back for the final. That being said, motion, or, no, we don't need a motion. Adjourned.